All right. Well, looks like we're just about ready to get going, guys. We'll stall just a little teeny bit to let more people join, but I think we're in a good spot. So I just wanted to, again, thank everyone, panelists and attendees, Genetec support, everybody that's been a part of this for joining today. We felt that there was really a sense of urgency to get this thing going and start talking and collaborating on this, pretty sensitive subject. There's a lot of gray areas on what the next steps should be, and we really felt like bringing some of the innovative leaders together to discuss could help one another, help us as a manufacturer, help the airports together as you guys work together and collaborate together. So we've got some really relevant topics to discuss with some exciting representatives from different airports across the country. And before we get started, I did want to do some housekeeping real quick. So we definitely want this to be a collaborative session. It's definitely, like I said in the emails originally, this is not an opportunity for Genetec to talk about us. We'll talk about you guys and learn from you. So it's going to be very collaborative. It's engaging between the different panelists. And we're also going to have questions at the end of each topic. So we'll budget some time to answer questions. But if you could, any of the attendees, if you could send your questions through the chat box you'll see over here on the side on the GoToMeeting webinar piece, you'll click on the chat and you submit that. That'll go to a moderator and they'll either answer you directly depending on the question, or we'll pose it to the panelists at the appropriate time. So before we get going too much, I just want to go down the list of panelists here, and maybe if you guys could just each go through, provide a quick introduction for those that don't know you yet. Maybe starting with Ken, we'll go down the list here. Ken?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kenny Warwick. I'm the manager of the O'Hare Communication Center. Now I also oversee the Midway Communication Center. Lucky me. We're a full 911 dispatch operation here at O'Hare. Some of you may have come by and seen this over the course of years. I've only been here since 1991. So I've been here for a few years doing this, and we're happy to have Genetec now as one of my many tools in my toolbox. So that's enough of me. I'm boring as hell. I'll listen to the rest of you highly intellectual people to take me down the road.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Adam Steffel. I serve as a director of aviation security for Denver International Airport. The way airport security is structured here and all that I'm responsible for is really broken up into three main areas. One being compliance and enforcement. So all the airport security plan related requirements, federal regulatory obligations and responsibilities, that falls under my responsibility. That includes our security officer, contract security officer force is here as well. The badging and permitting operations, so all of the credentialing of airport workers, over 34,000 active badges here at the airport, and also work through many other matters, policy related matters, and as liaison with, of course, all the federal agencies, TSA, FBI, and including local law enforcement. So that's the general layout of my responsibilities here at the airport. Thank you.
Hey guys, I'm Ron Siddons with JFKIAT. I'll apologize on behalf of my colleague James Kissmer. He will be joining the bridge or the conference. However, he's in a meeting with an executive team right now doing a presentation, so he's running a little over. But basically, I'm now manager of digital platforms. Jared, you didn't make the change. What that means is that I'm now responsible for all the digital initiatives that JFKIAT are doing, both from displays, as you can see over my shoulder, to data sharing and other initiatives that we are putting forth. JFKIAT is, really working hard to remain open and available for all traveling passengers and public during this pandemic, because as you all know, New York has been pretty heavily hit, and the fact that I now have 1 minute wait time is a good thing. So we are currently working to keep the New York gateway open, and hopefully we can contribute to this panel.
Hi guys, it's Doug Wyckoff with Tampa International. Oversee the group's got client services, client support, innovation. We oversee the all your digital signage, desktops, service desk, innovation from biometrics to e-gates. A lot of that that we're rolling out right now. So it's a busy time for us from the standpoint that the projects are so marching on, and it's actually easier to work projects because there's less traffic. While we prefer the traffic, it is easier to get stuff done. Everything doesn't have to be overnight work, and we are heavily utilize Genetec, and we certainly enjoy that service.
I echo that part about getting work done. I have so many camera upgrades I got done in the last 60 days that I didn't have to pay overtime rates and nighttime rates, because you guys know Chicago, we're the union world, and it's made life a lot easier. I got a lot of things done and nobody's there. So.
Last but not least, Todd.
Who'd you say, Jared?
Todd?
Yeah, that's Todd Van Gerpen from Todd Van Gerpen out in Seattle. Good afternoon. I'm the manager of innovation and systems at CTAC, and that's kind of a catch-all for a lot of things. But I've got 20 years of airline background, and I'm in my 22nd year with the airport. And I'm responsible for the programs of the voice paging system, flight information displays on one hand, and then as a member of the innovation team, we are internal consultation for solution finding and product recognition for our internal customers as well. So thank you for asking me to join you.
Hey Todd, it's Kenny O'Hare.
Awesome.
So you part of that group that came out and saw us about 5 years ago? Because you look familiar.
Yes.
I thought I recognized you. You had a great group.
Awesome, guys. No, this is great. And again, thank you, panelists, for being willing to attend. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through our agenda real quick just so you can see sort of the topics of conversation. We're going to talk a little bit about processes and procedure changes for the employees and staff as well as the public. We'll move on to technology and some of the things that are changing, some of the myths out there and the corresponding operational changes that we're expecting to happen. And then one of the biggest things we want to take away from this is lessons learned with some of the things that they're talking about short-term and long-term about this happening again. We want to talk about lessons learned and see what we can do to keep things going. So we'll turn the presentation off so we're not distracted with any PowerPoint. Everyone can see the pretty faces of the panelists. So let's get started. So our first topic is it's around the different changes that we're expected to see at airports moving forward. We'll start with employees and the staff members of the different partners that you guys are working with. So Ron, I'll throw this one out at you to start, if that's okay. Just curious, what major changes have you made to things like parking, the entrance, check-in, or security checkpoint that's really designed to keep employees and the business partners safe? Some people are talking about come back to work programs. Curious what you guys are doing on that front.
Sure. Well, there's been a lot of initiatives that we've worked on, and we have actually put together some working groups to actually brainstorm and come up with ideas, both for our employees, passengers, and the existing tenants within the terminal. We don't control parking, but some of the initiatives that we've put forth so far are around, doing different spacing at both the check-in checkpoints throughout the TSA maze. We've started implementing things like, literally some stuff just went up today, plastic barricades between where the agents are checking in passengers and leaving a little slot for passing passport and ticketing and other information to the check-in agents. Down at the security checkpoints, even for the existing employees, we're throwing out ideas, so it's still a work in progress, but some immediate initiatives are breaking up the queuing so there's like a catch-all before you even get near the employee screening points, and only one person can go through at a time. There's constant sanitizing stations. We've put in all the offices. I mean, it's a myriad of things which, you know, anything we can do to try and keep our employees and our passengers safe, we're currently implementing.
Awesome. No, that's good. You know, with some of the others, I think was it you guys, Adam, that were making some changes on how some of the employees were working through the process. What are you guys doing there at Denver that's a little bit different?
For employee entry, some of the things we've already had in place worked well for us. You know, the concept of trying to reduce touch points obviously is a big priority for everybody. So we've had a long-standing project with the implementation of facial authentication at high throughput areas at the facility as part of our access control system. So that's been working well, and in fact, that's been driving enrollment. So right at its timing would have it, when we went into the situation we're in now, that became a big concern. We were really pressing for folks to get enrolled in facial authentication, and that's really allowed that to skyrocket and get more observation on what happens when we get that kind of volume working on the system, so to speak. So that's worked pretty well for us. We actually did. We had a very large, high throughput employee access location where we have our security processes in place for employees being transported to work in the concourses here. We've got if you're not as familiar with Denver, we've got a main terminal with 3 satellite concourses. So we had remote parking and associated facilities where people would come through the security process and then be bussed in. Well, we didn't want to jam pack employees onto buses, create health concerns or issues that way, try to apply some more of the social distancing requirements that we all see and are well versed in now. So we actually, the decision was made to just shut that whole process down because we didn't have such a sharp reduction in passenger traffic and associated parking. We now allow we basically reserved our East Economy parking lot that's right next to the main terminal. We allow all those airside employees to park there right next to the terminal now, walk in and utilize our employee access portals and associated security protocols, including facial authentication that we have there now. That's probably been one of the more significant changes, at least for employees. And then, of course, all the health-related issues like wearing of masks, separation. That's been all the discussion and application to over the last, especially the last 2 weeks, especially. So getting into policies for wearing masks for employees, and of course now the public. It was not only a regional mandate set by the governor, there was also City and County of Denver mandates, as well as even the airport makes it a requirement. But then that leads to the enforcement piece, which has been really for us just educational at this point. Luckily, social pressures and that's forced most of the employees and of course the traveling public to follow those guidelines. That's been helpful.
Yeah, no, this is good. Yeah, I'm curious, Ken, I wanted to throw one at you too. People are talking about wearing masks and social distancing and some of these operational changes, but I'm curious if there's any specific tools or any resources that you guys are implementing to help with employees and business partners as well.
Well, I'll start off by saying that as we speak, our executive team is finalizing our, I don't know if they're calling it a reconstitution plan or get back to work plan. They haven't shared with me the catchword is how we're going to use, but we're kind of focusing on that right now. I'll go step back on a couple things that some of the other panelists have talked about. Sorry, I'm Italian. I use my hands. One of the things that Adam mentioned I found interesting. We changed a lot of our non-essential doors to a contact-only reader for our airport devices. We've not received any direction from TSA. I'd be interested to hear what Todd and Dan and Adam have on this position as to TSA's approval for removal of the biometric, because we're fully biometric across the airport. I'm sure you are, Adam, and Todd, you are too. So you know where I'm going. So there was an initial move to talk about that. TSA did not provide a directive that said, yeah, you can exclude that now. You can take that out of your ASP or temporarily remove it, or any of those verbiages. So that's still in play, but a lot of the I would say non-essential, but the less heavy active areas that aren't critical to the AOA or the site of areas, we're using more contact only on the readers. From a standpoint of the employees, Adam kind of summed it up real well. That again, Chicago's no different than anybody else on this panel. We're taking direction from our governors and our city leaders, and whatever policies and regulations they pass down, we're just going to apply here at the airport. As unfortunately all of us airport people are suffering right now, the travel volume is significantly, almost non-existent. So there's a whole lot of trouble, believe it or not, at O'Hare to keep social distancing at any one of our terminals. And I'm sure the same goes for Todd and Adams Airport. So from an employee standpoint, we still use the same employee entrances at the checkpoint areas. They still credential in. They're following the social distancing rules. We've identified social distancing spaces within the concourse areas, try to help the employees. We're right now focusing on what's our next step? What is the next step? Where is our governmental leadership going to direct us to, so we can open and get to the point where we can start seeing the passenger volume return. And so short of that, but I did have a question. Was it Adam or was it Todd that said something about facial recognition on access? So I don't know what you Adam, you use we're ProWatch out here. I think you're a ProWatch out there, aren't you, Todd?
No, I don't know.
Okay, go ahead.
So we went with the facial, and again, no facial recognition, just not to be overly detailed. We were big fans of the facial authentication. We use the stone lock technology. Our focus was besides just at a few test locations for Denver airport only employees, we expanded it. We got a lot of construction going on here. So we had a brand new dedicated construction worker access facility, turnstiles, the whole 9 yards. At all of we refer to them as first points of entry into the sterile or secured areas. We've set the requirement for ourselves to have that dual factor authentication. We have it campus wide. We're at about 107 locations where we require not only the credential but fingerprint biometric. Right. Of course, you can imagine we dealt with a lot of that pushback for having to use the fingerprint. We had the discussions about maybe paring that back a little bit, but we didn't. We kind of dug in a little bit there. We still wanted to maintain the level of security that we had. However, the focus of where we installed the facial authentication was at those highest use locations. So the construction worker access building, and of course our employee access portals in the main terminal. And eventually, when we return all those employees that are now parking next to the terminal, when we move them back to their satellite parking operation, my hope will be that we have already completed facial authentication install at those buildings before we go back live.
The parking that you briefed on, we did a similar thing where we opened up. I'll use my backdrop here. You like this? I think I'm close. Right about here is the new United Airlines parking lot for United Airlines employees only. Americans still parking up here. It's another long story that none of you want to get bored with. But a lot of these employees were then being bused to here and to the core. And one of the things that we wanted to eliminate was to better help the social distancing and get these people off the bus. So we did sort of the same thing you did, where we changed our badges have access to some of the parking lots too. We were we can manage parking off of our side of badges as well. And for this particular purpose, we utilize that for, quick turnaround process. And now we allow some of these folks, the airlines are now allowed to park right next to the terminals, which reduces and or eliminates some of our busings. We have a lot of busing going on because our people mover that's being built is being built and extended, and it's not ready yet. So we're doing that. I'm glad to hear that we're doing the same thing there.
Okay.
So I don't know if I covered your question, Jared, or not, but a lot of our plans are in the works as we are developing to get ready to go to the next step.
Yeah. No, I think some of the things that we're doing, we're hearing things from the government, we're hearing things internally and collaborating and putting together teams, inside the airport to figure out what we need to do now. And what are we going to do for next steps, right? So, one of the things that I wanted to pose to Doug is more about the communication now with the passengers, right? Like, we have all these things in place, but what are we doing to get that message out there so that people are actually becoming more comfortable, so we can build that trust and credibility again. I've read articles about some of the things you guys are doing there at Tampa. What are you doing to get that message out so that people, whether it's employees or passengers, are comfortable with coming to work or getting on a plane again?
And hats off to our executive team and to our communications team as they put together what they call TPA Ready, which did get some national exposure, the Washington Post and NBC Nightly News. And the whole pretense was we hit the social medias heavy as far as making sure that everybody is comfortable. We put out several thousand social distancing, spacing mechanisms. So when people do come through, it is a requirement for all employees to have a mask on, so that people come through and feel like that is appropriate. All of our concessions, ticket counters have the plexiglass up and appropriate. Even if you go to a Chick-fil-A, it has the distancing mechanism in place, shuttle entrances and so forth. So we try to, because everybody has a different level of sensitivity to that. Every passenger and even our employees, we provide a mask for our employees, so there's no concern there. On a regular reoccurring basis for the essential workers that are there. So we've tried to take every step possible to get that out to our customers and get them. We try to encourage folks, if you don't have a specific need, to help somebody, wait it and pick them up at curbside instead of coming into the terminal. Just all those little nuances to, we did the same thing that, Ken and Adam did. We stopped for our airport workers and concessions workers that were parking out of our north end. We allowed them to park in our long-term garage right next to the terminal. So again, you stop that busing mechanism. Everything possible to potentially, like as you said earlier, minimize the touch points and to communicate. We constantly communicate. We have open blogs with the social media world for people to ask questions, and our communication team and our executive team really do an outstanding job of reinforcing that with the community.
Nice. Any of the other panelists, are you guys doing anything out of the norm other than the traditional social media posts every so often, or a news post on the website? Are you guys seeing any success in any other efforts? Like he's talking about Washington Post. That's fantastic. What are you guys seeing? Are you seeing success in any other efforts?
If it's go ahead, Ron.
No, over to you, Adam.
All right. And it kind of gets into the, if we're talking about technologies we've implemented, et cetera, and if that question, Jared, really for the technology that's worked or how we're getting word out, a couple of things that have been extremely beneficial for us. One being we kind of luckily is, again, timing would have it. We were already ready to launch at the beginning of this year a new Denver Airport employee app. Many airports have different variations of apps. This one is for all badged employees. So it's kind of an internal way to message all the stakeholders that are working at this facility. Staff Base was the name of the firm that we had went with for the development of the app. And besides, relaying critical information. It's not an emergency management tool necessarily, but a way to get out important things that really not only affect Denver airport employees, but everybody at large in the badge holder community. And on that, we have our badging, links to our badging operations and people being able to get in line for a badging appointment. But really what was added to that is just, it's a constant banner now on the home page of the application on your mobile device, COVID-19. And it's all the resources and information and updates that go out. And even things like we mentioned when we were transitioning the employee parking lot to go from a remote satellite busing operation to next into the terminal. There was a lot of, that's how we transitioned the message that was coming, because that was going to be pretty alarming to folks that hadn't been here for a week or two or even longer, all of a sudden to realize and see signs as they're driving into the airport, oh, parking lot closed, where do I go? So what's unique about that development of that app, you don't want anybody to have access to that information, correct, right? So on the back end, we were able to provide reports on a daily basis of active badges or app badges that have been deactivated, and that would therefore dictate who had access to the information on the employee app. That's worked pretty well for us from an information sharing perspective.
Thank you very much.
Just to add on that.
Go ahead, Ron.
Sorry, nothing nearly as innovative as that, but what do you call it? What we are actually doing is we have implemented our own intranet site so that all the employees actually have access to it, and they're getting those updates. And as events happen, or if someone is actually infected, which we've seen a lot of staff members actually infected, obviously we are cognitive of their privacy, so we don't say who's been infected or anything like that, but we give alerts. And if there are specific departments that may be impacted, that's actually sent out to the through the intranet. So only, badged, if you would, employees have that access. And then if it's a little just sort of byproduct of the fact that we are primarily the only terminal, there are others that are open shorter times, but we're the only ones who are open 24 hours a day for the most part at JFK at the JFK Airport. So we have this nice big video wall in arrivals, and we put up these social distancing messages, which constantly circle and cycle to keep the message out. And we're also pushing them out to all of our FIDs along with PA announcements and everything else. So we feel that these are the tools that, keep drilling into the public. And you'll often see, especially here in New York, whenever they want to show any airport scene, if they can get into the terminal, that's the news media, because we don't allow them, but they find their way in. They always show our video wall to show, just how light the flights are. So that's what we do.
This is great, guys. Looks like there's been a question. Yeah, go ahead.
Adam, and you and I can maybe chat or email offline, Adam. I don't want to tie up the whole group. I'm extremely interested in your application process for your badge employees. We've been moving and talking about something like this for some time. Okay. Yeah, we've been talking about this for some time for a way to get messages to the badge holders, not just for emergencies or weather information and that kind of crap, but more importantly, changes in badging operations, changes in, we're closing this month, and this month we're going to do this. So I like the idea that just so your app is tied to your badging database, so that if Adam's badge is deactivated, whether he has the app on his phone or not, he will not get any updates or alerts.
I know that's a great question, and I know our IT team would be I'd be remiss if I didn't throw this out. We're not really, we're not technically connected. Everything's on our security access control network that we at all costs keep segregated from everything else in our enterprise network, as we refer to it. But yeah, what we were able to do is just provide this neutral site where our security access control network, drops that latest list. The application system knows to go grab that. And the big thing was, yeah, exactly. When a badge holder's if a badge is terminated, somebody leaves, we no longer want them to have access to that privileged information. So then the system's smart enough, oh, I don't see that name and badge number anymore. They remove them from access to the app.
We were looking to move towards something like that using Everbridge, which is our notification platform.
Yeah, yep.
You guys know what Everbridge is. And we were actually just starting to talk about that and working with our applications consultants to write it when the world came to an end. And unfortunately, we all had to turn our heads to something else. So I didn't mean to take up the conversation. Thank you, Adam. I'm personally going to chase that a little bit with my team. I'd like to see that utilized more here at O'Hare. I got 40,000 badged employees every day. So to be able to have some mechanism to communicate with them on just general customer service stuff, forget about the rest of the world. It would be a plus for us. So sorry, I didn't mean to take it.
Absolutely. No problem. That's good.
So guys, this is Joe DeGrassi in real quick. We had a question come in from Maria, who works over at Massport, and she was curious if any of you guys are looking at using beacons for staff distancing, something like looks like Aerostaflow or OTTOGEE. Have you guys looked at any of those types of solutions to kind of help with these processes?
Have not at this time. We're looking at a couple pieces of software that could show us alerts for various sized groups and so forth that, within reason. The big challenge with all of them is the policing, because as our team says, we're not the distancing police, but we are trying to be proactive, and it goes back to some of the other conversations I've had with other airports around the world, and that is, it's a fine line of how much do you invest into a potential problem, of how long is it going to continue to be a problem. And so that's a challenge, and the fact that
spot on, Doug, you're spot on.
And the funding is a challenge right now as well. So yeah, to your, I don't know a lot on where the beacons will come into play on that to answer your question specifically, but no, we haven't. We have looked at several other things, but we're kind of at that crossroads right now to what can be done, and then what do we do with the information when we get it.
Perfect.
In Denver, we haven't gone that far. Really, for Denver city and county employees, it's all about probably submission of each time people come to work each day. There's a self-submitted health check. Jared, you and I talked about, is it possible to integrate something into the credential, some sort of health check, which that's a whole other conversation, but those things aren't too far-fetched. Look at after the that unfortunate event in Seattle with the aircraft theft and crash. Do we make, just as the discussion then was, do we make along with all the security checks, a health review as part of someone's credentialed access to the airport? Are we now going to integrate these health related items? We very well may do that. Whether or not that lives in under the security umbrella, that's yet to be determined. But yeah, that's going to be a big item for debate.
I just want to see how long that lives in the ACLU.
Absolutely.
Only a matter of time before they speak up. As you said, as Doug said, as the world turns, no pun intended in the soap opera, but as we turn to another page, as this goes behind us, Doug's spot on. I mean, at what point do we invest all these airline dollars, and then 2 years from now we go, what the hell are we going to do with all these freaking gliders? Okay, we'll give the hell here. So you're spot on, Doug. You're exactly saying what I've been thinking all along. I agree completely. It's not that we're not concerned. Got to think of tomorrow. That's what we're all in a business to talk about tomorrow. Adam, you said something about self-checking or something like that. Are you presently? Is your employees presently participating in a self-health or self-temperature check? And I'm making this stuff up. I don't know what the name of it is, but are you presently involved in that?
This will probably be the same answer for all of our other colleagues here, but so at least from us city employees, we're almost there. We were tossing around some ideas on some sort of online form that can be easily submitted from a mobile device, not to make too much trouble in the process on a daily basis. So that's going to be voluntary. I think it'll stay that way. Where you see, what you all have seen, some of our airline partners, right, at certain locations are conducting temperature checks for their employees, and they're not letting them come to work if they're not meeting the standard, or that they've missed or haven't been able to verify that they got their temperature taken before they came into work.
Right, and just to expand on that, at JFK, that's exactly what we're doing for all of the IAT employees, and we're recommending and promoting for all of our airline partners and vendors that as employees come in every day at start of shift, we've given out actual, the thermal temperature sensors, and everyone has to go through that check. And if you do not, you're not allowed to come into work or to stay there.
Can I ask Ron a question? With that said, Ron, then do you, as an employer, tell the employee you are to go home? And what is the question on compensation for that day? I know I'm drifting off topic, but
it's a very good question, and something we're straddling very, very lightly. Fair enough. To the rest of the team, I'll just say, for the internal IAT folks, we send them home if they exceed the threshold, and it currently is with pay. Our partners, it's sort of all over the place.
Nice. No, this is great, guys. I love the engagement with everybody. Todd's been awfully quiet, and the question actually came in for him. Everyone was talking about different screens and being cleaned, and we've got plexiglass at check-in and all these places. Are you guys doing anything like that? And if so, are you doing anything when it comes to cleaning them and making sure that there's compliance? Are we logging this and saying it's every hour or it's every 10 minutes? So what are you guys doing out there in Seattle, Todd?
We are doing the maximum amount of attention that we can give with the staff that we have. Like everybody else, the resources are constrained, but the visible presence of our janitorial staff is key in getting the confidence back in the travelers. So as you put up the plexiglass barriers, you've now increased another 10,000 square feet of surface that needs to be kept presentable, because dirty plexiglass is infected plexiglass. So while it's a solution on one hand, it really can come around the other way and go, God, it's great CTAC put out all this plexiglass, but it was filthy. I wonder what else is wrong with the airport. So
Interesting. So are you guys, do you keep track of it? I mean, are you like monitoring when it actually happens? With 10,000 more square footage, or how are you monitoring how frequently they're doing it? Are you trying to keep them hold people accountable for it, or how's that work?
Yeah, it's just included in the routes of the janitorial staff, and then as each employee goes through it, they say, I've done this, and then report at the end of their shift. And then we also do the pop-up spots. If there's anything that was missed or created between cycles, of course, we're going to respond to that immediately.
Perfect. No, and I'm curious, all this sort of is sitting on your guys' shoulders to figure all this stuff out, but I'm wondering, are you guys engaging any of the stakeholders, like the airlines? Are they helping facilitate some of these things? Or do you have them cleaning some of the plexiglass that's sitting at the check-in, or is that falling you guys too? Or?
Well, it's interesting, it's what's in the rates and charges, what's common use area, what's public area, what's leased area. The biggest challenge is the pace at which these decisions have to be made, because the demand for decisions is by far exceeding the ability, just the human factor, to write the policies and even have the physical presence. So it's really, there's a lot of independent work going on that is eventually going to come together, but the response is too big for a single entity to handle themselves. So the air carriers in their lease space are on, like they are for any other hold room or anywhere else in their back offices, coordinates with their contracted janitorial staff as well.
Nice. No, thank you for sharing that. Joe, it looks like another question came in.
Yeah, this one was for Adam specifically, and it was from Bob Harvey, also from Massport. He said, Adam, on the facial authentication and employee portals, is that an opt-in program, or are all employees required to use facial authentication?
That is a really good question. It is opt-in. And so we're very careful to how we're expanding that capability and associated functionality. We do our best to educate everybody as to what the facial authentication is, and the fact that it's really a digital mapping of the face. There's no image capture, right? So then getting into that whole conversation about privacy and us holding any kind of that information on hand, but it seems as though use of facial authentication is more palatable for individuals that may be concerned about those sort of privacy related issues. But by and large, no one has an issue with enrolling in the program because they can prevent having to use the nasty fingerprint reader, and it gets them through much more quickly. So for any new technology that we're rolling out, and there's a lot of great bells and whistles out there, where we put everything through a pretty rigorous process with regard to, okay, it's one thing if the technology can achieve A, but does it also speed up the process and provide much better customer service, or create a much more efficient operation? Only if it's checking all those boxes, then we'll do it. But yeah, it's opt-in. And so you're asking, okay, if someone chooses not to opt in, what's the alternative? In those particular locations, we still keep the fingerprint running in parallel. Now that's going to have to be an interesting policy discussion, and has been up until this point. As we expand that out, we're very, very careful to still keep some of the more traditional processes in place. That doesn't say we're pulling back security. It's a different type of offering. So I mentioned that airside employee building that all the employees have to go through to be bused to the concourse is the security process. We had a plan in place to put facial authentication at all of that. We have numerous turnstiles at the location, and on the far right, the one turnstile we left to fingerprint, or that's what our plan would be. So we have those running in parallel, at least for now.
Nice work. One of the other questions that came in, I want to throw this out to Doug. Are you guys seeing any rise in, opportunist crime at the airports now that everyone's focus is being redirected somewhere else? Everyone's focus is on these other things. Are you finding any, rise in opportunist crime at the airport?
Actually, we have not. It's because we have our own police force on site, so it's allowed them to really expand their operations. Now they kind of report on the daily brief every day. I think they're covering some areas that they don't normally cover, a little heavier, where people could come, for potentially for safe haven or that type of thing. But no, I mean, volumes of people create volumes. I mean, just statistically create the higher volumes of crime. But no, they're most days are pretty quiet.
Okay. So I know one of the questions, before we get into the technology, because I know that's burning for everybody, I wanted to throw this one out to another question to Todd. Things like the CARES Act, they've recently become available for everybody, but for most of the mid-size and larger airports, it's just not enough considering the cost of operating on a daily basis. So I'm curious, Todd, what are you guys doing to try and maximize efficiency with what you currently have, whether it's technology partners and trying to maximize existing deployments, or utilizing resources more effectively, engaging more of the stakeholder partners? What are you guys trying to do to just maximize what you've got, do what you can with what you've got, considering the costs and resource availability?
That's a great question, because what we have isn't enough, and the technology that we need is not readily available. And then you can layer on top of that, we're all competing against each other for the same thermographic sensor. So I think one of the biggest elements of what we're currently doing is communication. I mean, if there's a person on the planet that doesn't know that 6 feet and wear a mask is the new protocol in life, then somebody's missed. But we're using our current technology, a lot of signage. Where we don't have electronic capability, we're hanging paper. And what that does is it just enforces the self-regulation that people have to have in a public space. So the resources that we're using are the talent of the staff that we have, the creativity. A lot of policies have changed to facilitate the communication, and it's just really a lot of this is hypothetical. SeaTac runs 58,000 passengers a day outbound. We're down at 2,000 right now. How effective is this going to be when we get 10,000? So we're doing things that are untested, but it really comes back to the resources are the staff that we have today, and the development of technology, which is even, the need is outpacing the ability, whether it's testing policy on what happens if somebody has a temperature of 100.5 as opposed to 100.4, and they have a need to go, an urgent need to get on an airplane. Who's going to make that call? So, and that starts to affect the efficiency and the ability for everybody to move freely.
Yeah, no, that's a great segue into, the burning topic, no pun intended, burning, right? So, a lot of the people a huge topic of conversation is this thermal camera testing. Where are we going to mount them? Where are they going to be in the passenger journey? Is it going to be, arrivals or departures? There's some really great things that are going on out at San Juan, which we'll likely do another session similar to this and get them involved and let you guys hear on what they're doing. But I'm curious, I want to hear from everybody. So whoever wants to sign up first, I'm curious to see, what are you guys seeing? What are you testing? When it comes to the thermal, if you've got something in place, what are some of the operational procedures that you're doing? Like what Todd says, if someone's been identified as 100.4 versus 100.5, what then? Where do they go? What's the plan on that? Maybe we'll start with Doug, if you're good.
That's the $30,000 question. Is it? And that's what I think scares the heck out of everybody on this panel. Is okay. I know this information. Who's going to enforce it? We're not going. The airport's not going to say, "Hey, you got to leave my airport." And
110% again, right on target, Doug. And the city of Chicago, who's the owner of the airport, we're not going to tell them that. We're going to say, "Hey, that's a passenger of you United or you American."
Right.
I'm not picking on any one airline, but airline Ishkabibble, that's your passenger. Are you going on your plane?
Yep, you're there to fly on that plane, and they're the only ones that are going to tell them they can't go. And that's, I know there's a lot of push for TSA to take that over and so forth, but I'm not sure what they would do with it. Yeah, I agree. It's just nobody wants to own that
points.
Yeah.
I think if an airport is putting out extensive temperature testing, that's kind of like a speed limit sign on a highway. You can choose to go 60. And not, or if you're feeling bad and you want to roll the dice and go to the airport, you have to know that there's a potential that your travel could be disrupted. So I think that the fact that you're being audited helps people rethink their need to travel and come to the airport. And I think that's probably most important, is to keep things upstream even before you get to the airport. And the thing that we're going to find is that the industry needs to be consistent across the experience. And we're going to have a real tough time doing that because we're moving so fast. But at the end of the day, a knowledgeable, informed, comfortable passenger is going to move through your facility faster and have a better experience. So all of the communication we're doing is really going to pay off, I think, in the long run.
Yeah, but it goes back, I agree with you, Todd, well said, but it does go back to a point that Doug made in regard to enforcement. If I choose to go 60 miles an hour, there's an enforcement tool to stop me. There's no known enforcement tool to stop me for not wearing a mask or whatever it might be. And you're right, Doug. Nobody on this panel, I know why here, and my group and my airport, we're not going to be the mask police and the guy with the tape measure. You're right. You're 1,000% right. So how are they going to enforce it? I mean, all of our cities that we all are living in right now are experiencing very similar things, whereas they're being forced to say we're mandating X, but there's no enforcement policy behind it, because the reality is there's no way to enforce it.
Yep.
Everything's a recommendation, but I mean, to Todd's point, that we try to express as much concern as we can, and when we've requested not to come in if you really don't have to, and we've requested so that people aren't standing around. We requested them to wear a mask, but that's really all you could do is put the request out there and show the public that we do care. We are concerned as an airport, and we want that safety of our passengers is utmost importance.
Yeah, I think with all the recent discussion around whether or not temperature taking is going to be deemed a federal responsibility, I think we're just kind of, we're educating ourselves, we're learning. Everything that between the airports and our airline partners are doing now, it keeps us ahead of the game. But, if that is a federal responsibility, that's going to be very interesting to see, how that gets rolled out from a TSA perspective. Where does that happen? Certainly cannot be a one size fits all, as we like to say, because I think Denver Airport might have opinions on where TSA or anyone else were to conduct that operation for the masses. It would be different from other people. Our philosophy is wide area and passive to the extent possible, right? Implementing the state-of-the-art technology while still allowing for the operational efficiency and customer experience. So others may have other opinions and may not want them to step inside off the curb on the building, but is that reality? Or can you even make that happen at your respective facility?
That's a good point. It seems like there's still a little gray area in this bit as we wait for some guidance either at the federal level. I know, like Denver, you're talking about there's a local guidance and recommendations and even requirements, wearing masks. But
you want to go back to the sentence? Federal guidelines. Just think about that. Mm-hmm. There is no such thing. That's the biggest oxymoron I ever known. There is no federal guideline. They make this crap up every minute. I think, though, the problem when we go to spend dollars and invest and find cool technology like what Adam's using and Todd and Doug are using is great stuff, and all the great stuff you're doing around out east. My son spent 2 years in Brooklyn playing hockey, so I was there a couple times. I think the problem is, again, we could spend gazillions of dollars on all this technology, but if there's not what do we, like you said, what do we do with the results, that input, that alarm, that alert, that whatever it might be? What do we do with it? I don't know. Looks pretty. Kind of cool. Who do we tell? I don't know. So, in my opinion, just strictly Kenny Warwick, that's got to be nailed out and ironed out first. Some of you guys talk about message boards and stuff. We're doing similar stuff here. Message boards on our roadways coming in. Now, the airport is, I'm not too familiar with how many of you folks are authorities versus, I know, Ron, you are, versus the city owned. But, we're a city owned airport. So technically, the airport is public. It's public property. The land side is public. So how do you tell the public you can't come in here? Now, okay, they're not tax-paying entities, but there's that gray line there too. We're closing this public building. Really? I don't want to be the first one to do that. So that's kind of a and some people use. I heard it was a meeting last week. Somebody was using September 11th as an example. First of all, I wanted to slap them, but they said you can't compare A from B. There was a national law enforcement crisis. This is a crisis, but a different standard, a different approach, where you could say, no, you can't come into this location because there's a national emergency of law enforcement, and how they coined that. So I think the biggest problem, guys, we're going to have is just trying to fit our technology into whatever rules they built. And if we have to keep coming behind them every time they change the rules, we'll never catch up.
Yeah.
Now I'll shut up.
No, that's a good point. One of the questions that came in was on the thermal stuff too. Just seeing if any of you guys have actually tested anything. Are you guys piloting anything? Are you looking at any of these thermals? Or are we still sort of on hold until we figure out what's going to be the baseline, the foundation for all of this? Have you guys done any testing? Looked into any of them?
Well, I know we're looking, Kenny here again. We're looking at, in fact, as I was talking, I just got an email from Diego. He's our CIO. Yeah, there's a couple of projects that we are looking at piloting regarding the thermal. But again, piloting, purchasing, I'll just pause there for a few minutes. And then, installation and then procedural operation. Whoa, big span. My camera's not that big. Big span. So yeah, there's a couple of things we're looking at. How fast? It's one of you guys said this. How fast can you implement to meet the policy? That's the other half of the challenge. I'm sure we all share the same procurement frustrations. I'll just leave it at that. Dealing with some of these rocket scientists we have to deal with in procurement and contracts.
Yeah,
30,
but you know,
I speak my mind. Everybody, some of you guys know me. I speak my mind. What are you gonna do?
yeah, at the end of the day, I'll take the easy job, and that's finding the technology and writing the deployment procedures. I don't want to write that. Be on the team that's having to write the response. And just
I'm on both all the time.
Well, I think Jared, back to your other point, some of the biggest challenges we have with the thermals is the false positive problem. Everyone you look at, I mean, we've all looked at them, and you're getting bombarded with everybody that has a solution. But if you tell somebody, oh, you look like you have a temperature. Well, okay, no, I don't. But and that's the problem. And I mean, the statistics, some of them are a little scary of how many false positives they create on a 100-person ratio.
I use that. Take that thermal image camera. Take my temperature right after our budget hearing. Watch how fast my temperature goes up.
Or how about after somebody spent the day on the beach in Florida?
Right.
No, yeah, good point.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a good point.
They're finding though that the ocular.
Well, let me know when you're there, Doug, and we'll talk.
Okay.
Yeah, from the bit of research we've done is that the ocular temperature in the corner of the eye is a valid core temperature indicator, regardless of any other condition. It's better than forehead. It's better than shooting them with the IR gun. So that's what we've found out so far, and we're leaning that direction. The other element that we're looking at is the black box that hangs from the ceiling behind the individual is your baseline temperature calibration system. So the units are constantly under calibration. So you can say that, yeah, you have a temperature because our machine is calibrated to say that you have, the information is true and correct. But that's the technology. That's the easy part. Then what do you do? So
I haven't seen the eye test. Is that a camera as well?
Yes. Yeah, Dave Wilson's been working on that, and that's about the extent of my knowledge of it, just in a brief conversation with him. But it seems to be, if you're looking for the credible determinant, that's probably the most accurate that's out there right now.
Yeah, one of the comments and also some of the things that we're hearing on our end is definitely the eye camera, but then also having it be the camera test is just first triage. It's just recognizing, okay, hey, there's one opportunity. There's one. It could be false. It could be positive. We don't know for sure, but that's just the first step. And then the second step is actually pulling out the FDA approved, scanner or temperature check. So it's if you got a lot of the false alarms, then there's obviously like the black box and the things that Todd talked about can obviously help. But we're definitely seeing from the people that we're talking to and a lot of the testing that's going on overseas too, they're saying, just have it be triage. It's just the very first step in all of this with those cameras and the thermals. Is just let's recognize it and then see what the next step is to actually take that temperature. So, so yeah, no, we've gone a little bit over, guys. I did want to ask one last question because I think this is critical for everybody. Is lessons learned, right? We're talking about what's happened now, but there's already talk of a wave happening again in October. And Adam said it best on the phone yesterday. We need to start thinking about COVID-22 and COVID-27 and all these other things that are potentially on the horizon. And Ron, I'll throw this out to you first, but I'd love to hear everybody's input. Is what are some of the things that we've learned today from all of this that we really need to work on and prepare for the next one?
Retire. I'm going to retire and move to one of Doug's beaches.
Well, we opened them.
There you go. There you go. Well, no, I think Kim said it best, and that we really are going to constantly be chasing this. If we try to come up with technology solutions or other solutions beforehand, we're constantly going to be behind the ball. So, do what you can to try and, maintain safe distance and environment for your employees. Keep investigating and looking at the technology that's out there, see what the others are doing and continue to collaborate. And then, that's all we can do at this point because it's a constantly moving target.
It really all comes down to exactly that. And we have to, every individual has to do their part. I mean, it may sound poetic, but that's the only way it's going to happen. And at the end of the day, we can deploy all the technology we want, but that's reactive. Let's put ourselves out of the technology business on this issue and just get it solved.
Well, I think one of the key things for us is we've and strictly not as much from the passenger standpoint, from the employee standpoint, we're fortunate because we had laid a lot of the remote philosophy for working from home and so forth was already in play coming into this. I can't imagine where we would have been if we as a unit hadn't had the vision. And it started where people were working one day at home or at one a couple days a month type thing. So it was a pretty, when we said, hey, only essential personnel, I mean, we've got roughly 450 people working from home every day. So I think we have to continue, as Todd said, we kind of keep looking in that crystal ball and see what we can do to continue to streamline the process for our passengers. And I think part of it is, not to get too off topic, but when we look at the biometric and the facial recognition for long term and streamline that passenger experience where they don't have to touch anything. They basically come in, check the face, hand over the bag through an automatic bag drop. Don't have to talk to anybody at the shuttle. TSA's facial, and they just make their way all the way through. And I think that's where we're definitely heading over the next 2 to 4 years. And those type things have to continue to evolve so that the passenger doesn't have to touch and feel and communicate with people, whether it be a ticket counter, whether it be a TSA officer, whatever.
Yeah, the two things that I would close on my end is the stunning revelation that the city of Chicago is having with regard to working from home. Remember, we're a heavy union shop, a heavy show up to work. You don't get, you're not here type of philosophy. And several departments, full departments are working from home. Of course, they're about as efficient there as they are here, but that's a different story. The second thing is, I think that guys, our industry, just me, our industry is going to drastically change. I believe, just me, I believe that the aviation traveling public is going to become a more family, pleasure driven, and the business end of it, they won't leave me alone today. The business end of it, from business travel, I think it's going to be the back end or the least used at all. Just my opinion.
God, I hope not.
Well, this has been great, guys. Really appreciate it. It seems what, sort of the takeaway from all this is obviously there's tons of change that we're going through now. There's going to be even more coming. As a manufacturer, Genetec, incredible software. We can only be a small part of it. Technology as a whole is only a small part of this, and it seems like, Todd, I think you hit it right on the head with just making sure that we have informed passengers. I think we've got to make a concerted effort to really educate them, because like you said, if we have an informed passenger, then the passenger journey, which we've all been focused on for years and years, will be much more effective and more fluid for them. So again, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate all the input that you guys have shared. We've already had lots of feedback in the chat, so we'll likely be doing this again. We'll get some input from a bunch of other people, and we really want to thank you guys again for taking time out of the day to contribute, and for all the attendees, and for the Genetec teams supporting on the technology side to keep this going. So thank you guys again. If you need anything, reach out to us. We'd be happy to discuss more. But thank you again, and have a great day.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Very much.